Hello? Hello? Monsieur Jean? Hello? Hello? Okay. Hello, everyone. So, good afternoon, everyone. It has been such a lovely day so far. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our next plenary speaker, Antonia Clare. Antonia Clare is an English language teacher trainer, international conference speaker, and a writer. Her special interests include the use of video and new technologies in ELT, materials development, creativity, and the psychology of language learning. She has a degree in psychology and over 25 years of teaching and training experience, spread over a variety of countries in Europe, South Africa, and Asia. She is currently a full-time writer based in the United Kingdom and a consultant trainer with NILE, Norwich Institute of Language Education, where she works on their MA in Professional Development for Language Educators, focusing on materials development. She has always been a writer and enjoyed writing materials for her students. In the late 90s, Pearson, then Longman, invited teachers to write a proposal for a new course book. She got together with her colleague J.J. Wilson, our morning plenary speaker, and wrote a sample unit. They were amazed when their proposal was accepted and have been writing together ever since. Together, they have written best-selling ELT course book titles, including Total English and Speak Out. Antonia's most recent publications include the Creative Teacher's Compendium, an A to Z guide of creative activities for the language classroom from Pavilion, and a chapter in the Routledge Handbook of Materials Development for Language Teaching. She is also working on a book together with Sarah Mercer and Tammy Gregerson, which looks at teaching global skills in the language classroom, a positive language education approach. Antonia is the founder of ELT Writers Connected, a group of more than 300 writers currently involved in writing materials, and she is also an artist. She lived and worked in Italy for 5 years when she was in her 20s. She fell in love with the language, the food, the architecture. She also met her life partner there, so her kids, now nearly grown-ups, are bilingual, English and Italian, and they eat a lot of pizza. Painting expressive still life, seascapes and abstracts and language, words and writing are her passion. Antonia also plans to start running creative retreats where people can spend time following their own creative passions. So here and now, let's welcome Antonia Clare.
Oh. Hello, can you hear me? Great. Thank you so much. As you've heard, my name's Antonia. I'm a teacher, a trainer, a writer, an artist, You might think that I'm someone who just doesn't seem to be able to make her mind up. But I like to think that I'm someone who listens to that little voice in your head that says, ooh, that sounds interesting. Why don't you find out more about that? And that just seems to be how my career has progressed from one thing onto the other. It's fueled by curiosity and creativity. And I'm always looking for new projects, new things that I can learn about. It's fantastic to be here at the APPI Conference. This is my first face-to-face post-lockdown conference, and it feels so good, doesn't it? It's also my second APPI conference, and I have to say, I think APPI conferences are probably my favorite conferences in the world now. They're in Portugal, where the sun shines. You have the most fantastic teachers here, and also a really wonderful team of people, the APPI team, who have worked so hard to put this conference together. So before I start, I want to say thank you. A big round of applause to them. So be a flamingo in a flock of pigeons. What is that all about? Creativity is my passion. It's something I'm really, really passionate about. I strongly believe in the power of creativity to make learning more memorable, to make it deeper, to make it more enjoyable. I think it's really important for our learners, but it's important for us as well as teachers, and it's important for us as people. You know, living a creative life helps to make our life more meaningful, gives us a sense of fulfillment. It's motivating. I've been researching creativity now for over 10 years. I read about it, I write about it, I speak about it at conferences, I try and practice my own creativity, and I also like to encourage others to follow their own creative pursuits. So that's very much what this talk is about. It's about trying to encourage you, to motivate you as teachers, to have the courage to sometimes do things a little bit different. Okay? And creativity does require courage. I think it's really easy when we're under pressure. You know, we've got so many hours of teaching that we need to do in the week. We've got to follow the coursebook syllabus and test and assess our students and mark things and put all of our lessons online. Whatever the stresses may be, it's very easy for creativity to be the thing that gets cut. And yet, it's so valuable. When you don't teach with creativity in mind, your lessons become ordinary and monotonous and repetitive. And as a teacher, you get bored. So if you're bored, you can imagine what the students feel like. So being creative in the classroom is about stepping slightly outside of your comfort zone and doing things just a little bit different. Life can get so monotonous. You know, you get up every day, you go to work, everything's the same. And as humans, we crave difference. So, you know, you come out of your daily routine, you go somewhere new, like you come to the APPI conference, you meet new people, you eat new things, you go to new places. It wakes your brain up, and it gets your mind firing, and that's really what we want to look for in the classroom as well. So, okay, so I've talked about creativity being stepping out of your comfort zone, or, you know, having courage to do things a little bit differently. But before I go any further, I'd like to ask you what creativity means to you. What does being creative mean to you in the classroom? And I'm going to ask you to just turn to a partner, introduce yourself because you may be having a drink with them later, and just tell them very quickly, what does being creative mean to you? You have 30 seconds. Okay. Can you shout out any of the ideas? What did you say? Any ideas? Surprising the students. Doing something a little, yeah. Doing things differently. Divergency, okay, divergent thinking. Thinking outside the box, fantastic. Using your imagination. Any more? A little bit loud? About taking risks, isn't it? So it requires that courage, yeah? You don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be, and that's so important. You're having to think on your feet, and so are your students. Okay, so all of those ideas, I want to talk about what I mean when I talk about creativity, and I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with the idea of big C versus little c creativity, right? Where big C creativity talks about the geniuses, Picasso, Shakespeare, Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci, people who had groundbreakingly creative ideas, versus little c creativity, which is more about our everyday creativity. Perhaps the way you arrange flowers in a vase to put on your table, or maybe you take things from your fridge and you put together a meal from your leftovers, or maybe you take a photo of your lunch and you post it on Instagram. All of those are examples of your own everyday creativity. But I want to think about two more C's that come from this model, the 4C model of creativity, put forward by Braga and Kaufman. And they talk about pro-C and mini-C creativity, where pro-C refers to a kind of expert creativity. So somebody who has become very good at what they do, perhaps a professional musician or professional artist. They're not genius yet, but they've, they're on that path. So I think everybody in this room, we can all say that we are pro-C when it comes to language learning and language teaching. Okay, we've become expert in that field. And the other one is mini-C. Now, mini-C is the creativity that's inherent in the learning process. So it's described literally as the novel, personally meaningful interpretation of experiences, actions, and events. I'm just going to let you read that for yourself. Think about it. So what we're thinking about here is when a student learns something new in the class, and it's new to them. Okay, they haven't done it before. They've that moment of they've got something new. Now, the task that they may do may not be revolutionary at this point. So, a child who paints a picture or writes a story, okay, it's not a genius event, but it's new and it's meaningful to them. And so there's creative learning there. That creativity is involved in this sense of personally meaningful. So we're looking at depth of meaning, and when a student, come on, okay, creative learning is meaningful in the sense that it offers the learners experiences that contribute to their own sense of self-fulfillment and purpose. So our learner is in the classroom, maybe they did well in a test, or maybe they contributed well to the conversation that they had, and so they feel good. Okay, and that feeling of, good, that motivating feeling is going to help move them forward and give them a sense of meaning and purpose. We know that when we look at Dornier's work, we know that having these kinds of tasks that are open-ended and more creative link to a student's motivation. So they find those kinds of tasks more satisfying and more motivating, and they'll be encouraged and they'll want to do more of them. And finally, I think it's useful to think about creative learning as trying to add layers, extra layers of meaning. So when the student is in the class and they experience something which is meaningful to them, that has value for them, That's adding a layer of meaning to the input, which is going to make it more memorable. So creative learning that has meaning is going to be more memorable. It's going to stand out. So in order to make things memorable, another thing that we can do is make them unusual. So if you're looking at a flock of pigeons and you see a flamingo, it's going to stand out in your mind, okay? You're going to remember it more easily because it's out of the ordinary. It's a bit kind of quirky. And there's a lovely quote by Professor Cederberg of Ohio State University who talks about this way that we remember information, that we build the memory on the scaffolding of what we already know, but then we have to violate the expectations, so we change it. And it has to be a little bit weird, and that's how it then sticks out in our memory. Think about memories of your own personal life. You remember the things that were different when you went on holiday one time, when you met someone by a coincidence. Those are the things that stand out. And it's the same in our lessons. So if we want to engage our learners, we sometimes have to do things just a little bit differently in order to engage their attention, like the guy this morning over here who was using the archery in order to engage his learners' attention. So maybe you're working with a course book and you're teaching some phrases, some language like have a cup of coffee or have a cup of tea, and so you use the images which are in your course book, and that's absolutely fine. Or you might choose to use some different images, maybe a flamingo having a cup of coffee or an elephant having a cup of tea, and immediately those images are going to be more memorable, okay? You will listen to a lot of talks over the weekend. There's a good chance that you won't remember very much about what I talked about today, but I bet you'll remember the picture of the pink flamingo having a cup of coffee. So we're looking at reasons to be creative in the classroom. We've looked at that, and what I want to do now is to focus on ways that we can do that, because it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to take a long time. Sometimes it's just a question of making a small tweak to an activity, or just generally our attitude in how we put our lessons together. So I'm going to start. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. My slides have gone wonky. That's going to keep me on my toes. So this should say favorite possession. So my first activity is called favorite possession, and I'm going to tell you a story about this vase. This vase on the screen that I've painted is one of my favorite possessions, okay? And I want you to think about, can you guess why it's special to me and where I got it? Any ideas? I painted it, I made it myself, maybe, yeah? Oh, okay, nice. Lovely. Where do you think I got it? Italy. You've been listening. Okay. So I'm going to tell you the story about this vase in a minute, but first I'm going to explain how the activity works. Okay, so what you have to do in the class is you draw a picture of your favorite possession. It doesn't have to be a painting. I did that because I love painting, that's my passion. But it could just be like a pencil, you know, just a very easy, simple piece of paper, pen. You draw a sketch of your favorite possession. Now, some people don't really like possessions at all, and they say, I haven't got a favorite possession, I don't know, or it's my phone or something boring. So you can allow other things. Maybe you can draw, you know, the students can draw their pets, but no people, okay? We're just talking about objects or maybe pets. And then what they do is they swap their picture with their partner. Now, to do this activity, I've asked JJ if he's going to come and be my partner. They swap pictures with their partner, and what happens is, come up. You're going to need a microphone, or maybe you'll stand there. And you say, okay, so now this possession is your favorite possession, okay? And I'd like you to think about why it's so special to you and where you got it from. And JJ is now going to tell us the story of the vase. And I'm going to listen.
Hello? Okay, this vase. One day I was swimming in the Nile in Egypt, and I was attacked by a crocodile, and a sudden beam of light hit the crocodile's eye, so it no longer attacked me because it couldn't see. And the beam of light was the sun reflecting off this vase. And so I grabbed the vase, which had saved my life, and took it around with me for the rest of my life. And that's why it's my favorite object. Can I go now?
Interesting. So would you like to hear the story of the vase? So this vase was actually my great-grandmother's vase. She used to put roses in it from her garden. She grew a lot of roses, and I remember going there as a child and seeing the vase on the table with the roses. My great-grandmother was married to my great-grandfather, obviously, and he was an artist. He was an artist in pre-war Germany, and he did a lot of anti-propaganda art there, and as a result of that, had to leave Germany and ended up in the UK, where he lived in this house that I used to visit, and he had a little shed in the garden, which was his studio. And as a little girl, I would go in there, and he would give me paints and things to paint with. And I remember that, the smell of the paint, the smell of the roses. And it's a very fond memory for me. So I actually don't know where the vase came from. I know they traveled a lot around Europe. Maybe they picked it up there. But for me, it's become a kind of motif, something I use in my paintings a lot. Is that a question? Okay, good. Okay, so that's how the activity works, okay? You give the picture to your partner, they have to come up with the backstory, and you listen. Oh, yeah, interesting. And then you tell them the real story. Okay, you've got 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute. Take a piece of paper. I want you just to draw a possession, and then you're going to do the activity. Okay, I'm going to give you... The timer's on. Okay, everybody got a picture? Wave your picture at me to show that you've got one. Quick, quick, quick. Doesn't have to be Monet. Quick sketch, lovely. When you've got a picture, I want you to show it to your partner. See if they can work. If your drawing is really, really bad, you could maybe put one word to help. See if your partner can guess what it is and what's the backstory. You've got 1 minute. With a partner, see if you can tell them the story. You have to talk to the people behind you. Stop drawing, doesn't have to be a masterpiece. Tell a partner. With your partner. Okay, I'm going to cut it short. I'm sorry. Okay. Now you've got started, now you don't want to stop. That's what happens, yeah? But you get the idea, okay? So, what is it about an activity like this that I really enjoy? Well, for me, there are two key things. One of them is the drawing. And I'll often use this in class, you know, do a drawing before you do the speaking. It gives the learner a chance to come up with something different, a chance to think about things, to think about what they're going to say when they tell the story. Okay? So I'll often do that. Rather than just tell your partner what you did at the weekend, maybe draw what you did at the weekend, gives them a chance to think about what activities they're going to talk about, and then show your partner. Can they guess what happened? So using that element. And secondly, for me, really key is the story element, okay? Using stories, the power of stories. I think JJ said this morning, the most powerful tool we have is our stories, okay? Learner narratives, getting the stories that we tell about ourselves and our lives, give us a sense of meaning, okay? Think about how often you tell the same story about yourself. I hope it's not just me that does that, right? You have the same stories and you tell them over and over again. So giving learners opportunity to tell those stories about themselves in English, in the target language, is helping them to develop their identity in that language. So any opportunity to do that, I think, is always really valuable. There's a beautiful quote by Maria Rukeyser who says, "The universe is made up of stories, not atoms." Now, obviously, it's made up of both, but I think it's interesting to think about how we often struggle to remember facts and figures, but we tend to remember someone's story. So what's going on in an activity like this? We have the creative personal response. We're looking at learner narratives. There's a sense of engagement, okay? The lady here said, "Oh, I liked the story." So people are genuinely interested to hear each other's stories, which I think is very valuable. But as well as that, we have the effort of the imagination. They've had to come up with, you know, JJ was brilliant at it. They've had to come up with an alternative story. So there's a lot of fun that they can have with that. And it involves deeper processing, so it's going to be more memorable. We're taking an activity which is familiar, right? Show and tell. We do it all the time. But we're giving it just a little bit of a twist to make it a bit different, to add that element of surprise so that they don't always know what's coming. Doesn't take any materials other than, you know, the pen and paper to do the drawing. Obviously, you could do it with a photo as well, but I always like the hand drawings. It can work in a physical classroom in the same way that it can work online. So you can put students in breakout groups. I was doing this quite often, you know, during lockdown. But also, there you could get students, if they're actually in their homes, they can show the objects, as you know, the real object, as well as just a picture. And it gives us this sense of joy. And I think this is really key. When we do something creative that has that value for us, we get a lift. We get a sense of, you know, satisfaction that we did something different. It stands out for us. And it gives us, yeah, a little sense of joy, which is very motivating. And obviously, it can fit easily with the language syllabus that we have to kind of keep on top of. So you might be doing descriptive adjectives. It's a bit old, it's worn, it's tatty. Or maybe narrative tenses for talking about a story and what happened. So it links in with that. So it's not time taken out away from the syllabus. Okay, second one, stress test use. So for this activity, I'd like you to put down everything you've got. Put down your phones, put down your pens, your paper, your bags, everything else, because I'm going to ask you to stand up. You've been sitting down all day long. It's time to stand up. Stand up, have a little shake, Stand up, 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 up. Stretch. Great. Wave. Woohoo. Everybody, come on, slow coaches. Up, up, up. Okay, this session is called Be a Flamingo. You know what flamingos look like? So put your left arm up in the air, stretch it up high. That's the flamingo's neck. And now I'd like you all to stand on one leg and do a flamingo. No, I'm joking. Of course I don't want you to be a flamingo. But listen very carefully. You can put your hands down and listen. Hands down, hands down, hands down. I mean, you can keep waving if you like, but you don't have to. Put your hands down. Listen. It's quite complicated, this activity. You're going to work in a group of 5. 5 or 6, okay? Can be more. Some people can just watch. Wait, wait, wait. First I'll tell you, then you do it, okay? You're going to work in a group of 5, and you have to have a number in your group. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 6, 7, if you want, okay? You're working together. And what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a word. The first word is going to be flamingo, okay? How many syllables? Very good. Where's the main stress? Ming. Is that 1, 2, or 3? 2. So, in your group, number 1, you sit down. Number 2, you stand up. You're the main stress. Number 3, you sit down. You get flamingo. 4 and 5, you're not in this word, but you're in charge. So you watch them, and you have to decide if they're doing it right, okay? When your group has got the right statue, you put your hand up for your group, and we see if we've got it right, okay? Get into your groups of 5 or 6, and give yourself a number. Okay. Okay. Are you ready? First word. First word, here it is. Quick, quick, quick. Very good. Got one. Got one. Elephant. Good. Got one. Elephant. Got one. Good. Good. Okay. Right, that was a practice. Do you know what you're doing? Here's your next word. Oh, no. This one. Get it. Catastrophe. Nice. Any more? One over here. Show me. Catastrophe. Okay, well, hands up. Well done. Catastrophe. Nice. Put your hand. Okay. Next one. Oh, you're too good. Got it? Good. Catastrophic. Got it? Catastrophic. Very good. How about this one? Very good. What is it? Let me hear it. Let me hear it. Advertisement. Is that right? How about in the States? Advertisement. Advertisement. So it depends. Okay, you got it? How about this? No, this one. Okay, thank you. Have a seat. Okay. How are you feeling? Better? So what happened there? Movement. Okay? It's so powerful. Just a little bit of movement. With younger learners, essential. Okay, with teenagers, useful. They've got a lot of extra energy they need to get rid of. With adults, still really important. Okay? You feel better too. So there's no reason to think that adults are really good at sitting still, for hours on end. They're not. So anything that you can do to bring in a bit of kinesthetics, to bring in a bit of movement, just helps to change the pace, to change the energy in the classroom, and is so, so valuable. Okay, so we've looked at a speaking activity, we've looked at a bit of movement. Okay, the final activity is an activity that's based on a text, so a different way that you could use a text, like a reading or a listening text in your class. And we're going to do a story which is called The Beast. So you might do the normal things. You start off the story, you start off with looking at some pictures that are related to the story. And you put your students into pairs or groups and you ask them to maybe predict what do you think the story is going to be about. Have a look at the pictures because this will help you in the activity. Look carefully at what's happening. Just think in your mind. I'm not going to get you to talk to your partner. What do you think is going to happen in the story? Okay. I'm going to tell you the story so far. So there's a young couple and they're thinking of buying an empty apartment in an old building which is rumored to be haunted, especially the living room of the apartment. So the couple get permission to spend the night in the apartment. They go into the allegedly haunted room. They lock all the doors and windows from the inside. I'm not going to do the noises that JJ did this morning. And the woman in the couple tells the story of what happens next, okay? She says, so, late that evening, we went into the living room, bedroom. Okay, you've got the idea, okay? You're going to give me the story. But you get extra brownie points. You get extra points if you can come up with some really interesting, creative answers. You can say anything you like. You can talk to your partner and shout out to me, both. So we went into the living room. We locked the windows and the door from the inside, and we also covered the floor with roses. Tea bags. Flower. White flour, just to see if anyone stepped across it. We switched off the lights and settled down into 2 comfortable chairs. We talked for a while and waited, but nothing happened. Outside, a full moon shone brightly in the night sky. Then, just after midnight, what happened? Come on. The locked door suddenly opened. The locked windows flew open and a strong wind blew into the room. We looked at each other in shock, and then we heard a terrifying sound like the howl of a wolf. And in the moonlight we saw shadows. We saw the shape of an enormous beast move across the room and through the wall. The door closed and locked itself. The windows flew shut, and then we woke up. Nice. Silence. For a few moments, neither of us moved. Then I switched on the light. We looked around the room. Nothing had changed except the flower. Anything else? The flower. The floor. In the flower we saw footsteps, footprints. Anything else? 4 footprints of a massive animal. We ran to the door, shaking with fear. Just before we ran out of the room, I stopped, turned, and... Remember the pictures? Turned and... took some photos of the prints in the flower. We ran out of the building and out into the street, where all was calm and quiet. We stopped to catch our breath. I checked my camera, looked at the photos of the beast's footprints. The photos were very clear, with the flower on the flower, floor on the flower, covered with white flour. But, very good, there were no footprints. Okay, so again, just a different way to work with a reading or a listening text. You've got the level of engagement all of the way through, okay? It's a very intensive reading and listening. You were doing reading and listening. We weren't separating the two. It allowed you to practice that very important skill of predicting. But what I really like about this is the fact that you can allow for some creative and quirky responses. And some students will really enjoy that. Not necessarily. You had the choice. You either come up with what you think is going to be in the story, or you can come up with a humorous alternative. Easily fits into a lesson with any text that you're doing, and also with the language syllabus. So you could be looking at things like ing or ed adjectives, terrifying, terrified, maybe narrative tenses for the story, or in this particular story, perhaps the dramatic language, the howl of the wolf, the terrifying sound, an enormous beast. Okay, so always linking it with the language. Okay, how are we doing? Good. So 2 things that learners, teachers often say to me when I give creative workshops like this. People often say things like, oh, you know, I love all of those activities. They're really, really nice, but the problem is I can't do that in my classroom, you know. We just don't have the time. We're too busy focusing on the syllabus, and, you know, we're not allowed to move the chairs around, or whatever it might be. There's a long list of reasons why people say they can't do that in their situation. So my answer to that is simply this, that there is an element of defiance when you're being creative, okay? You are often having to go slightly against the rules. And I think it was Chaz earlier in his talk talked about how in your classroom, you make the rules. So actually, you need to work within the constraints that you have. I had a primary school teacher, and we were doing a lot of work on drama with kids. And she said, you know, it's great, but we don't have any space. You know, there's like all the desks and the chairs are fixed to the floor. We can't move anything around. So she came up with this workaround. We tried to think of, okay, how could you do it? And eventually she wrote to me and she said, you know what I've been doing? I get the kids to stand on the chairs, and then they do the, you know, the movement activities on their chairs, because there was no other space in the class. So you work with the constraints that you're given. If you believe it's important, you will find a way to make it happen. Like I said, it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to take a long time. You can always find 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute to do something creative in the class, and it will be so worthwhile. It will just help to give that little lift to a lesson that might otherwise be, samey. And kids, they have to go through hour after hour after hour after hour of, these lessons. So it's nice to shake it up. The second thing that people sometimes say to me is, oh, Antonia, so many nice ideas. I really would like to do some of those things in my classroom, but, you're so creative. I'm just not a very creative person. I'm not very good at drawing and not very creative, and, so how would I come up with these? And my answer to that is, firstly, nobody is not creative. We're all creative. It may be that, you haven't found the thing that you want to be really good at, or you don't consider yourself creative because you're always comparing yourself to somebody who's better than you. But creativity, is going on all the time in how we live our life. So we're all creative, but also we don't have to come up with, our own amazing original ideas all the time. We can just steal them from other people, So you go to a workshop, you read an article in a book, you go to talk to your teachers in the staff room, and you pick up an idea from someone else, and then you take it into your classroom and you work with it. And maybe it doesn't quite work properly the first time, but you try it again in another class and you change it slightly, you adapt it. So you build on what has gone before, and you gradually make that activity part of your own repertoire. So we learn from each other. Creativity is a collaborative act. It's something that we pick up on from each other, and it's infectious. The more we do it, the more we share our ideas with other people, the more ideas come back to us. And so it's something that we can build on. You know how flamingos, have you ever seen those videos where flamingos all dance together? That's amazing, and they all follow each other. So that's what I want you to think about when you go off and you want to be this, fabulous, creative flamingo-type teacher. Just think back to when you were at school. There may have been teachers that you maybe didn't always get on with, all of them. I know people were talking earlier about, the kids just don't really seem to enjoy the lessons. They don't want to be there. And, my son's always complaining about some of his teachers. But I think for all of us, there will always have been one teacher who really stood out. A teacher who took the time to take a personal interest in you, or to do things a little bit differently in class in a way that engaged you. So that was the creative teacher. And what I'd like you to be able to do is to go off and into your lessons and to be that standout creative teacher for your learners. Go and be a flamingo in a flock of pigeons. If you liked the activities, there are 10 zillion more of them in this book, Creative Teachers Compendium, that I wrote. This one not with JJ, but with my colleague Alan Marsh. It's an A to Z of creativity. So A is for art, and B is for beginnings, and C is for conversation. So each chapter looks at a different element, with just easy to work with activities that all then link with a language point. If you'd like to see any of my paintings, then please go onto Instagram and find me on Antonia Clare _art. Or write to me if you want a copy of the presentation. I'll also send it to APPI. But if anybody wants to write to me with questions or a copy of the presentation, I'd be happy to send it to you. Or if you want to stay in touch to find out more about creative retreats, I'd love to hear from you, and thank you very much. And I believe we have a few minutes. So if anybody has any questions and you'd like to ask questions,